everybody, and welcome to the channel. Today I wanted to do something a little bit different. Obviously, I am currently right now live on Twitch, but I will be putting this on YouTube. And I wanted to make a video talking about some of my favorite stuff. I know I personally spend a lot of time at night looking for something to watch, a movie to watch, generally just flipping through Netflix, whatever, right? And I thought about, like, what if so? And typically, a lot of people ask me for like suggestions on what they should watch. So I was thinking about, suggesting 5 movies I think that are really good from the action genre. Now, I try to get 5 that I really stand behind, and then 5 honorable mentions. I wanted to get 5 movies that some of them are pure action, some of them are action comedies, some of them are more dramatic. And I'm going to kind of go through those. And some people may not even necessarily consider all of them to be action movies, but I think that they're worth noting. So the first 5 that I'm going to do are just going to be the first 5 honorable mentions. Most of these are probably within somebody's action movie resume or rapport. They're pretty well aware of them. But I think that they're pretty classic in terms of you should watch them. Or they have a very niche sort of audience. That like kind of that genre of movie. Whereas I think the 5 that I'm going to suggest are probably a little bit more offbeat. Maybe most of you haven't seen them, that kind of thing, right? So the first one I want to talk about, the first honorable mention, is Under Siege, starring Steven Seagal. I think it's pretty hard not to mention Steven Seagal in a video like this, where you should are suggesting action movies. I am not the biggest Steven Seagal fan, but something that should be noted is that basically, a lot of the ones that I'm suggesting this honorable mention have an element of cheesiness. That's kind of what made these 80 action movies great. There's a couple on here that are from the 80s that are just like slimy, really kind of even goofy in premise, and this is one of them. But that's kind of what gave them that kind of definitive kind of identity, right? So if you're not familiar with the movie, I don't even remember what. I guess his last name is Casey, or his name is Casey Ryback. Steven Seagal is a chef on like a military ship, and the military ship gets taken over, and he has to free it. You have all the usual suspects. It's just kind of like in terms of like silliness, unneeded nudity, silly plot, just like an action flick. And I feel like we've seen this one a million times. It's basically like Die Hard on a ship. It's maybe even how the screenwriter pitched it. Just really kind of a really silly premise. But if you're into like the kind of like the bravado, Pettis, I just ain't downloading COD. Okay, leave me alone. If you're into kind of like the bravado and the very Steven Seagal-esque action movie, this is be for you, and it's probably the best one. I think like Hard to Kill is another one that somebody probably would suggest in this kind of. No, it's not downloaded yet. In this vein, so this is a suggestion, but this is once again just part of the honorable mention. This is not one that I would say that I love, but if you need something to watch, this is one of them. Second on the honorable mention list is Bloodsport, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. I don't know where it started, possibly with Enter the Dragon, with Bruce Lee, where they had this kind of like secret tournament where people come and they fight each other. But this is probably the one, I feel like they have made like a million that have like almost the same name as this one, and they all came out. I also think Kickboxer or whatever, which was another one of his follow-ups, they're very similar to this. They overuse the word kumite in this movie, which is somewhat annoying. But basically, it's the same stupid kind of premise where he was in the military. He learned skills to kill people. His brother dies, and he goes to avenge him. And he's got to fight people from all different fighting styles. It's like the UFC, but in a movie and set in a kumite in Hong Kong or some shit. Very 80s cheese. Once again, if you're into the Steven Seagal, the Arnold Schwarzenegger, this is probably up your alley. I want to say I've seen there's Blood Fight, Lady Blood Fight. There's a whole bunch of movies that are just kind of lame spin-offs. I think Blood Fight is the one with the kickboxing champion in it. I can't remember what, something the dragon something. Quite a killer nude scene in that one, if you're into that. But basically, just a bunch of the same kind of 80s cheese is present in this one too, and also Jean-Claude Van Damme's horrible acting, speaking, all around being a person. But he's in great shape and can do things. I think this is the one where he's like tied up, and on like this weird thing for training, and he like breaks it with his legs. He's like his legs are tied, and he just breaks it. I don't know what point he was trying to prove there, but you know, here we are. This is what we got. It's entertaining at the very least. Also, the final fight when he's fighting this. Okay, well, hold up. This dude, pretty good. He has that kind of like Hulk Hogan pump up moment where all of a sudden he's like, "Yes, now I can kill you," and he does. So, also terrible is his name Frank Dukes in the movie. It might just be the worst name for a main character that I've ever seen. And Dukes is spelled D-U-X. What a terrible, terrible name. Anyway, that is going to be another suggestion for kind of like the honorable mention. The final 80s cheese movie, my favorite probably 80s action movie, Commando, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. I don't know. It just has the strangest continuity issues and stuff that just is totally unbelievable. Alyssa Milano is his daughter. So the story is basically Schwarzenegger was like a Green Beret or secret Black Ops operative, and he's just trying to like hang out with his daughter. I'm not exactly sure where his wife went. Probably dead. Who knows? But they have this totally cringe relationship that they show within the first 4 minutes or so, where he's like throwing her in a pool, and they're eating snacks. He makes a joke about Boy George because he doesn't understand gender dynamics because it was 1985, and it's just really goofy. And then like his ex like leader of his group is like, "Hey, somebody's gonna try to kill you. I'm gonna leave these two commandos here," even though he's like the greatest commando of all time. Kirby, his leader, like leaves, and then 5 minutes later they're attacked. It's like they could have like crossed each other in helicopters, and immediately kill the other two commandos and take his daughter for ransom, and he's got to go get her back. There's just so much silly bullshit. It's got like the stupid Arnold Schwarzenegger lines, like the one guy says, "I'm a Green Beret," and he says, "I eat Green Berets for breakfast." I think that was Bill Duke who said that. And that's just idiotic. They somehow go to like a military surplus store and they're able to buy rocket launchers. Or, well, not buy. They steal rocket launchers. I apologize. For some reason, the main antagonist is wearing like chainmail. I don't understand why. They flip a Porsche and it's totally destroyed. And then Arnold Schwarzenegger, of course, picks it up by himself, an entire car. And it's not damaged anymore. Just a bunch of weird stuff going on there. Very 80s cheese. Oh, he jumps out of an airplane into like a foot of water, and it's totally fine. It is like 80s cheesiness at its peak. It's got a kind of like this verisimilitude in terms of like how they deal with their main character. He's just got this heightened reality where he's got access to anything, he can do anything, and he's impervious. And it takes it like to a whole nother unbelievable level, as opposed to like a Die Hard or something where he's getting fucked up all the time. But at least you could believe he could cut his feet on glass and still live, right? Anyway, this is probably my favorite of the three 80s cheesy movies. I think Arnold probably makes the best of them. Obviously, you have like Predator and things like that you can also pivot to if you're thinking about that. So I also have some, I believe it's Indonesian, I don't want to say Kung Fu, just martial arts movie in my top 5 best, but in the just kind of like worth your time, honorable mention area of this, we have Ong Bak. There's several Ong Bak entries starring Tony Jaa. Tony Jaa is a huge action star, like international action star. I haven't watched these in some time, but I know that they're definitely worth a view. He's kind of like also the IP man or Ip Man. I don't know how you say it exactly, but very similar to that in terms of he's just a martial arts master who's making movies. I know that there's one really well-known scene where Tony Jaa lights himself on fire, and he's got to like fight all these people, but he actually lit himself on fire, and immediately after the take had to jump in water because he was on fucking fire. This is kind of like we're going past the 80s cheese to now this is like early 2000s. It's a bit dated in terms of its presentation, which might turn some people off, but the martial arts are still there. If you're like a Bruce Lee fan, I think you would like this. Um, I went through kind of a phase of trying to watch specifically Hong Kong action films. Um, and there's one that I really like coming up that I'm going to tell you about. But I think you won't be. This is one if you just want to turn one on and just watch someone just kick the shit out of somebody. And this is it's a little bit dated, but if you're into the genre, it'll definitely work for you. Um, so the last one I want to do from this group is kind of like a troll pick, or just kind of a pick that it's like if you want something absurdist or idiotic, this is where you're going to go. Um, this is like past. So you have like the 80s cheese, then you have real action movies, and this is like I don't know if this is like self-aware or like postmodernist or just really bad. But Jiu Jitsu with Nicolas Cage, um, this is so goofy. There's barely any story. Trying to make Choni Jha, and also if you see Frank Grillo in any movie, you should know that it's probably going to be a rocky road. Um, but it's just like they got all these really good fighters together, and then they got like Nicolas Cage, and they try to make us believe that Nicolas Cage could like stand on the same feet as like Tony Jaa, which isn't believable. And then they had all these weird like they'll be like, okay, let's have 10 minutes of Tony Jaa fighting, and then 10 minutes of Nicolas Cage fighting. And also, I guess if I remember, there's like a comet coming to Earth to destroy everything or something, and they have this secret society they got to tie. It is absolutely idiotic, and I think it's actually worth the time to watch this movie because it is so bad. And the action sequences, like if you juxtapose them to the other things we saw, like you have enjoyable, even cheesy stuff that's at least entertaining. To this is just pure, unadulterated garbage. I didn't know it was a comic book, and also it made less than $100,000 with a $25 million budget. So, yikes. This is a good watch if you want to laugh because it is just really really dumb, and I don't really know how they manage to even make this, but I think Dimitri Logothetis actually has had some big movies. I want to actually look through that real quick. Hard Bodies 2. Nope. Nope, nope, nope. That is not it. Kickboxer Vengeance. Nope, nope, nope. That's a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. Nope, 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 nope. Kickboxer with so basically just makes Jean-Claude Van Damme movies. I don't know. This movie is bad, but I suggest it in terms of laughing. Anyway, so on to my real actual suggestions. Police Story, starring Jackie Chan. Like I was saying before, I went through kind of like looking through Hong Kong action movies. And if you aren't aware of Hong Kong action movies, like in like the circumstances surrounding their creation, I suggest watching a documentary that's on Netflix, Iron Fist and Kung Fu Kicks. These guys that made these movies were absolutely nuts. Like I don't know if you're aware, like, but they did all their own stunts. Like there's a stunt in this movie where Jackie Chan is holding on to like a double-decker bus, and he's like actually doing it. He's like they're driving through the streets, and he's like fighting people and hanging on and shit. Also, a really cool in the opening scene, they're like in a Kowloon or like a slum in Hong Kong, and like there's cars going through it. They're blowing shit up. It's fantastic. But I think this is like this is probably peak Jackie Chan. I also love Who Am I? If you can kind of, I think it's dubbed. I would imagine it is, or subtitled. But if you can kind of deal with that, or just looking for like the story and stuff, this is it. I mean, but anyway, going back to the documentaries, things like I can't remember. I think it was Jackie Chan. They were making a movie, and they like blew up a building, like the roof of a building, and they had to like throw him in a car and throw all the stuff in a car because they hadn't gotten any permits. So they were running away from the police because they made all of these explosions and shit, and nobody knew it was a movie, and they had to get out of there before the police arrested them. I mean, people stabbing each other and breaking each other's bones and hitting each other over the head with bottles. People were really into this shit. Like these actors, these stunt doubles, and then there were guys who were known for doing this stuff, like known for just beating the shit out of their bodies. In one of the last scenes, Jackie Chan, I think it's in a mall, he's like going down a bunch of, it's like a chandelier with huge glass and stuff. And he goes down the chandelier, and he fell and just went through like a bunch of glass and stuff and almost killed himself in real life. Absolutely married to the craft. It's no wonder that he's like 60 years old and broken. But this is like peak. Also, if you really like the movie, there are sequels as well. But another thing to note is, I think we all think of Jackie Chan as this action star, probably the biggest star on the planet, maybe of all time, because of his. Hey, they actually talk about all the things I was talking about. Anyway, but he actually started his career not only in martial arts, but also harkening back to kind of like 20s cinema. He did all this kind of body humor. Who am I thinking about here? Charlie Chaplin, like Charlie Chaplin-esque. He has this scene where he's like working with a bunch of phones and trying to like listen and talk to people. He's got one on his foot, and it's so if you're into like that kind of pantomime, it's not really pantomime, but body humor like that too. That's also another thing. But obviously the action will be the kind of the draw here. I'm trying to think if there's anything else to note. It's just a really good action film. It's one that definitely stood out when I was watching them. Admittedly, I lost steam pretty quickly, but this was this really got me kind of sucked in. I'm trying to read what it says here. In 2016, Police Story was voted the 4th best action film of all time. So this may be one that people just aren't necessarily familiar with because it is foreign to them, not only because it is from Hong Kong, but also because maybe they're not watching movies from the 80s like this. It certainly wasn't part of my canon. So definitely check out that old Jackie Chan kind of backlog. So this is probably the first one that most people wouldn't consider to be an action film. I'm trying to see neo-noir prison thriller film. Okay. The way this movie does absurdist violence is just next fucking level. Okay? It's kind of like when you were watching Drive, if you ever watched Drive with Ryan Gosling, he just starts stomping in that dude's head in an elevator. There is actually, another curb stompy type thing in this. But like this movie goes from 0 to 8,000 in about 2 seconds, so it's pretty slow to start. It's more of a drama talking about how Bradley Thomas, the main character, is down on his luck, so he becomes a drug mule. Tries to save his family, is providing for his family. He's a good guy. He's just stuck in a bad situation, as these things go. He eventually gets arrested and then has to do some bad things in prison to try to save his wife. I don't want to get too in depth in it, but dude just starts breaking arms, ripping faces off, busting people's heads in with like weights. This is incredibly violent. Has a weird kind of soulish soundtrack to start the movie, and then they get kind of this like, I don't want to talk about, it's not necessarily dark synthwave or something, but it has this really, I can hear it in my, it's almost like a theremin type thing, like musical-esque score that is kind of haunting. It is really offbeat. It's really strange. Another one that like this could never ever happen. You definitely have to suspend your belief. I know that our prison system isn't exactly A1 steak sauce, but this is taken it to a whole nother level. This man starts actually fucking killing people in prison. He kicks a dude's head off at one point. He actually just kicks someone so hard in the head, their head detaches from their shoulders. And that should not be slept on. That is pretty crazy. So I would definitely suggest this one. It's not necessarily... the ones that I've picked, people are going to say, Johnny, this isn't necessarily action, but I think it's worth it. There's the action element. It's not necessarily Jackie Chan. The next two after this are also going to be in the same vein, but it has good action, good story. It's worth a watch. And not only that, but it's probably ones that people have probably passed over. So I think it's worth a watch. Vince Vaughn, obviously, maybe not so obviously, is the main character here. Jennifer Carpenter, one of my favorites from Dexter, probably one of my favorite characters of all time on television, top 5. And definitely worth a watch. Here's another offbeat one. It is action, even though it's not action. And I think what makes some of these movies that I'm suggesting, I guess this is number... So, Police Story was 5. The last one, Brawl in Cell Block 99. Perhaps I should have said what the name of the movie was. Brawl in Cell Block 99 was number 4. I got a little bit carried away. This movie's called Shaolin Soccer, number 3. Stephen Chow was making some very interesting action movies in the early 2000s, just really strange. And I think they're worth noting because they're so different. I think Kung Fu Hustle is considered better than this one. It didn't really resonate with me as much, but this one I remember watching with my dad back in the day, and it is so fucking strange. So essentially, they just have a bunch of poor dudes who were all part of this Shaolin order, and they decide they're going to come together and make a soccer team to like beat this guy who's just a total asshole, right? But the thing is, they use their Shaolin martial arts training to play soccer. It is the most strange idea. I've never heard anything like this before. But it's like he's a kicking specialist, so he's like a really good scorer. There's another guy who could spin on his head. There's another guy who can use his stomach, so like he's like the goalie. I don't remember if that's specifically right, but there's like all these guys who have these different Shaolin skills that were supposed to be meant for like martial arts. They're using them on the pitch, right? It's definitely strange. It's offbeat. Technically, it's a sports comedy film, but there's also just a bunch of action elements as well. And I definitely think this fits in it. I think the whole point is that these movies are a little bit probably unseen by most and definitely offbeat. So I would definitely suggest this one. And if you enjoy this movie, he also has Kung Fu Hustle, which is his other big movie. I don't know if he was doing anything else that really came to America. Let's check this out. Yeah, I don't know any of these other movies. Not to say that they're not great or whatever, but this is 2001, 2004. His big bust outs there. So that is number 3. That is Shaolin Soccer. So now we're number 2. Probably a top 5 movie for me of all time. Once again, this is considered a comedy film and crime film, but it's also got a lot of good action at the end sequences. Definitely top 5 movie. Probably top 3 movie for me of all time. This is Martin McDonagh won Best Original Screenplay for 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. I had to remember the whole title. Number 2, In Bruges. I love Martin McDonagh because his movies feel very much like a stage play. He comes from writing stage plays. His other movies are Seven Psychopaths. He also had Shooter, which was a short film. I think it was called Shooter. Six Shooter. My apologies. He's got a new movie coming out. That's very exciting. And it's about 2 hitmen who go to Bruges after a botched a hit on a priest. And the priest is actually the king that was north of the wall. Also played Julius Caesar in Rome. Don't know what his name is. I apologize. But just the humor, absolutely hilarious. The dramatic irony, the drama just in general is really good. Also, I'm a sucker for movies that show you something but tell you something else, right? So this movie is more than what it tells you on the surface. And I think after a close reading, or if you look at analysis by people who have watched the movie very closely, it's the trip to Bruges on a surface level is just to run away from police officers. But in terms of what it actually means for Ray, the main character, Colin Farrell, it's really he can't leave. It's torturous. It's a metaphorical purgatory for him, so he can internally grow, and he comes to a decision at the end of the film on how to break himself out of purgatory. So it's more than just violence. It's more than just drama. It's a contemplation on our existential existence in the world. It's very deep. It's very great. It's hilarious. The one thing that you'll have to probably try to overcome is accents if you're not really into that. But This is absolutely Martin McDonagh's magnum opus. Definitely deserved better treatment and regard from like Oscar community. It's a much better movie, I think, than Three Billboards. I watched it recently. I like it quite a bit. It just doesn't really stand up to this one. This one is just an absolute masterpiece. And this is probably the best movie that I'm going to suggest to you in terms of just pure being a film. If you're not really looking for a visceral experience in terms of being really engaged with story, with kind of picking apart the pieces of the story, then I probably would not put this one on the top of your list. If you're just looking for someone to kick somebody's ass, you can definitely look for Police Story or some of the ones that I had as honorable mentions. Those are just more straight action films, or Mission Impossible or Marvel or whatever. But I wanted to kind of do things that weren't kind of middle of the road, just regular. But there are good shootout scenes in this, good violence. Brendan Gleeson explodes at one point. I don't want to give too much away on that, but I probably already did. Anyway, so that's number 2 in Bruges. So number 1 is 2 parts. The Raid and the Raid 2. Okay. There is like a moment where you watch something and you immediately know it's the greatest you've ever seen or experienced something. Like you eat a steak that you've had at a place where it costs $80, or you play a video game and you're like, holy shit, this is like the greatest thing I've ever played. This is just absolutely, the Raid and Raid 2 are the 2 best action films I've probably ever seen. Iko Uwais, I don't know if that's how you say his name, is just an absolute superstar. And unfortunately, in coming over to America, he made that movie on Netflix, We Own the Night, or something like that. The Night Comes for Us. I'm 50-50 on that. What is... The Night Comes for Us. He was also in Snake Eyes. I gotta watch this Fistful of Vengeance. He's in The Expendables. Beyond Skyline, Headshot. All these are just kind of mediocre movies, but the Raid movies, I don't know if I can contribute to Gareth Evans or whatnot. But the Raid and the Raid 2, next to kind of like the John Wick series, which is kind of tired, but it's going to be enjoyable still. Those are probably the 2 best action movies, bar none, out there. That's kind of, ignoring kind of the Hong Kong tradition and stuff like that, but this is definitely something worth checking out. So I'm personally privy to or lean towards the Raid 2 as the better of the 2 films, but it seems like everybody else likes the Raid 1. The Raid 1 is very minimalist in story. Essentially, the main character, Rama, goes in to try to bust a drug lord. There's some police corruption, whatever the fuck. But it is just literally like goes into the building and then 2 hours of like nonstop kicking people's ass, fucking breaking limbs, cutting heads off with door frames, which is very memorable, by the way. He just goes full extension, slams the dude's head on the ground. And then like, not only that, but we're talking like 1v1 fights where, they're doing like fighting each other with like butcher's knives and fucking, the weight of the fight is like, just immeasurable. Like it's palpable. Great fights. Great. The drama isn't so great in this one, but the fights are just mind blowing. And this is, by the way, number 1, the Raid and Raid 2. But I would say, so that's the first one. I don't want to give too much away on the plot there. The Raid 2 is kind of a more derivative plot in terms of, I guess the Raid 1 you can kind of compare it to Judge Dredd a little bit in terms of how it's set up, going into an apartment building, kind of going up levels. The Raid 2 is kind of more a derivative crime movie in terms of like, it's like he's infiltrating a crime family, he has to earn their trust, and he has to take it down from within, yada, yada, yada. It's all the same shit. It has more of a story, which is a little bit more enjoyable, but there is a fight in a prison where they're in like this muddy field that is just like the way it's shot, man. It's like what Dunkirk was trying to do, where they were trying to put you in the middle of the action, but I feel it didn't necessarily achieve anything. But this is like, we're in the shit, man. The camera is just like going from one person stabbing somebody with a knife to another person breaking another person's neck, another person hitting another person in the head with a rock. There's another part in that previous scene where he's fighting like 30 people in a bathroom. Um, there's some other non-main characters, some bad guys who they kind of lean on disability as kind of like making them bad people, which is always kind of a terrible trope in movies. There's a girl who is blind who has, I think it's like hatchets, and a guy with a baseball bat who's deaf and dumb, or maybe just dumb. There was a canceled sequel. They were gonna do a Raid 3. That's lit. And so I don't really care for that, but I guess it gives the viewer the impression that that person is bad because they have some sort of ailment, which has kind of been used throughout the history of time. If you look at Wonder Woman, they have the guy. He has like a messed up face, I think. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Basically, it's just an overused trope in Hollywood that's not too great, but absolutely incredible fighting sequences. And it's pretty long, but it's definitely worth a watch. And it's definitely probably one of the best action movies I've ever seen. I'm not sure if many people have seen this one, but it's definitely worth a watch as well. So if we go through, we had 5 was Police Story. 4 was Brawl and Cell Block 99. 2 was in Bruges. What was 3? Well, this is embarrassing. Anyway, watch it back. 3, and then 1 is the Raid and Raid 2. I would kind of consider them to be one whole movie. I sat down and watched them both back to back. It was like 5 hours, 5.5 hours of just pure heart pumping, just craziness. And an absolute fucking masterstroke. Let's check out this canceled sequel information here. He planned to take a break from martial arts movies for 2 the Raid isn't going to be happening anytime soon. Nothing written. Okay. Well, they were planning on it and it just didn't happen. So anyway, this is going to be going up on YouTube. Tell me if you like this. Tell me if I gave you any good suggestions. Give me suggestions. I'm always looking for something to watch. And if you want to have me make a video about something like this, like 5 suggested movies, we have like... I was thinking about movies that will make you cry. Musicals. I love me some musicals, low-key. Drama movies. Anything I can really come up with, I can get you some suggestions. So leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that business. This will be up soon. And hope you enjoyed this. There's going to be some suggested videos up here. I don't really know. I guess I could probably put some of the stuff I've been doing with tier lists and stuff. Hope you enjoyed this. I would really like to make some more of this because movies are kind of my forte. So